Hello and welcome. I know our listeners are not used to me doing the intros, but that's because this is a special episode. This is our Pistons preview on Pure Michigan Sports. Here to bring you all things Pistons today is myself and Christian Peck-Dimit. Now, Christian already gave you some Pistons props for the season opener on Wednesday, but I do want to start looking at the season fully, just kind of from your perspective. You've got a very, very young team, probably one of, if not the youngest team in the NBA. How does the lack of experience, I do want to start with that question. How does the lack of experience, I guess, play out this year from your mind?
It's a good question. I'm glad that we can do a Pistons preview, just because I think a lot of people sort of, especially after the last 2 years, like wrote them off. Probably rightly so. I don't think anyone that didn't watch the Pistons the last 2 years, deserves to be feel left out at all because and even the tightest of Pistons fans probably didn't watch most of the last two seasons because they were terrible. But I'll start with the fact that I think this team is going to be pretty solid. I think if there's a time to hop back in on the bandwagon before they get good, before the rebuild's complete, it's probably this year. Not to say they're going to go make the playoffs or do something like that, but I think this is the year they take a big enough step in the right direction that you can start being excited again. And to answer the question, I think the youth plays out. I know I just said something very positive about the team. Now we're going to go the other way. I think the youth on this team plays out probably not too unlike what we saw last year, where it played out in any time you had a lead in the fourth quarter. By the end of the fourth, you didn't have it anymore. Silly turnovers, not being efficient with the basketball, whether that's shooting or, of course, passing, and then just not being used to the moment, making silly or even stupid plays down the stretch of games, I think is probably where it's going to manifest. I think most of the team got a little bit older. Cade's got another year. He's going to have the ball in his hands most of the time. Guys like Stu and Jaden Ivey got a year older. And then you add a couple of veterans. I think that helps a lot. But you're still going to see exactly what you referenced there, Alex, which is stupid or sort of rookie mistakes out of this team.
Now, here's my question. You talked about this year to be it being the year to get excited. Currently, if I were to place a $10 bet on the Pistons to win the finals, I would win 10 grand. Is this the move?
Yes. No, do not waste your money. I would love that bet to pay off. It's not going to be that type of year. And I think it's important to sort of measure expectations because we reference a lot of times on this show. And it's funny because we are ourselves contributing to it. We're on Twitter. Go follow us, Pure Michigan Sports on Twitter. But Twitter is a cesspool, or X, or whatever you'd like to call it. It's a cesspool, and you get a lot, especially in the sports world. You get a lot, period. You get varying degrees of, I think this team is probably going to be worse than last year. I think they're going to lose, they're going to go 0-82. They're going to be awful. All the way up to this is a play-in team. This is a team that can be a top 8 seed in the East. And I think both of those takes are equally ridiculous, to be honest with you. But I tend to lean more towards this being a play-in team. I don't think it is. I don't think we're at that level, and I don't think you should expect that. But I think the important thing for Pistons fans is measure your expectations. Because of another 14-win season is a loss, of course. And another 20, even if you get up to 20 wins, that's a loss too. 25 wins, I think, is even. You look at it and you say that team is underperforming, even though that's right near the over-under wins-wise that this team is at. But I think at the same time, if you go into this season expecting the Pistons to make the play-in, like a lot of people do, you're going to be disappointed. It's just going to happen. I think you almost run into a Tigers sort of problem that we talked about on the main episode, where if you expect this team to have a run, in the Tigers case, it's have a run again. In the Pistons case, it's to make a run at all. you're going to be disappointed, even if the team actually took steps forward from last year. So no, don't go throw your money on the Pistons to make the finals.
No, I was going to ask. I have the play-in one up now. DraftKings, no free
plus
ads.
350?
Plus 350. So that's not a hammer either.
I think it's worth a couple bucks, depending on. I don't think it's like a 3-unit play. $5,000. I don't think it's a 3-unit play, but I think if you want to throw a half unit on something, come on, get a little bit excited.
Now,
it's fun to bet on your teams.
Now, I will say, let's get real here for a second. It has been like looking at not even just this year, but forward the next 1, 5, 10 years. The Tom Gores era, not been too great. I think we can all agree. Is this a guy you feel comfortable with behind the big seat with the moves that he made? Obviously, bringing Bickerstaff in to coach the team. The no hoodies rule, we could talk about that here in a second. That blew my mind. I never thought I'd hear something like that out of the NBA in any capacity. But do you think, even with the past history, that this is a team that can win with Tom Gores at the helm?
You know what? That's actually sort of a loaded question, and it's a really good one because I think you see all over sports, every league, every level, bad ownership usually leads to the team being really fucking bad. Not every game, not every game, not every season, but like you look at the Browns and how, they invested in Deshaun Watson, they made a bad investment. But now they're unwilling. Obviously, it's different with his injury now.
Johnny Manziel was. It wasn't his fault. Okay,
bigger in Cleveland than your buddy LeBron. But I think, bad ownership usually leads to consistently bad teams. You're seeing it with the Pistons. You're seeing it with the Browns. You're seeing it with Carolina in the NFL. You can name 10 different teams where bad ownership has just kept them in the dregs of their sport. I don't think Tom Gores is a good owner. I'll get that out of the way. But I think finally, and yes, it took a little bit longer than we would like to have made those decisions, but getting the guys out was a good decision. Getting Trajan Langdon in, he's technically not the GM. He's the, president of basketball ops. We talked with Bryce Simon about that, where they made up a new position for him. Whatever. Bringing Trajan Langdon in has proved so far to be a good decision. Getting rid of Monty is a massively good decision and probably an obvious one. Bringing in JB Bickerstaff, no hoodies and all. I know I'm wearing one, but I'm not mad at that rule.
You're fucking banned, dude. No practice for you.
I think it's also a good decision. I think it's panned out well. I think you're finally seeing moves this offseason where they didn't just make moves in a vacuum. If I've said it once, I've said it a million times. The moves this franchise has made for the last 5 years have looked real sexy on paper. And then you look up and the product you're putting in between the white lines is god awful. I think you're finally finding a balance there where you spend a little bit of money. You go get Tobias Harris. You go get Malik Beasley. You get these veterans that, no, they won't be part of the future rebuild where you're looking at 23-year-olds to invest in long-term, but they're going to make the team better right now. They're going to help these young guys improve, and they're going to add to your win total right now in this moment. I think those were good moves. I think the jury's out right now on Tom Gores, but I think he took steps this offseason to sort of get back in the good graces of the Pistons, or at least Pistons fans.
Fair enough. Now, we are gamblers. We normally do our picks. I do want to get I do want to pick your brain specifically on some Pistons futures. The wins over under right now is at 25.5. How do you feel about that number? I'm not asking over under. I'm saying, is that a disrespectful number? Is that about where you think it should be? You're the handicapper. You are Vegas. What are you setting the number at if it's not that number?
Be totally honest with you, I initially thought very good number. 25.5 feels safe to me. But as I thought more about it, I think it feels disrespectful, not in the fact that they're looking at the Pistons and writing them off, but just due to the fact that they've won 31 combined games last year or in the last 2 years. I think it's a relatively safe over. I think this is a team not to believe in, to invest in, but I like that over. Another number that I'm really toying with right now, odds wise, minus 120 for Cade to average 8+ assists. I specifically sought out that bet because in my mind, I think that's something that he can do. I think Cade steps up. He's a player to watch for me this year. Should it be obvious? Maybe, but I really think he's going to have an all NBA level season. Part of that starts with two things, and they go hand in hand. Dropping the turnovers, boosting the assists up. He's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. The one thing...
Don't give the ball to the other team.
I'm trying, I promise. As someone who has played countless games of pickup basketball, I can tell you it's a lot easier said than done not to just give the ball to the other team. Maybe
Fair
that's
enough.
just me and how terrible I am being a 5'11" white guy.
But I'm right there with you, brother. Let me tell you.
But like I said, the Pistons have a lot of good things going for them. One of them is Cade. They have one real thing that I think if you wanted to assign a grade to their offseason, the only thing holding you back from an A+ is the fact that they didn't get a backup point guard. Now, that may be indicative of where they want to go in terms of how do they use Jaden Ivey? Do they stagger his minutes with Cade? And that's a whole different discussion for a much deeper episode into the Pistons. But really what it means is, like it or not, the ball is going to be in Cade's hands a lot. If he steps up, stops with the careless turnovers, he can have an all-NBA season. If he doesn't, he'll still be pretty solid, but he won't be what the Pistons need him to be this year. And that is an 8+ assist guy. I love that number. I don't love the value on it. I was a little bit disappointed that it was minus 120 because I probably would have taken it if it was plus 300. And that's sort of where I thought it would be. The Pistons are disrespected by a lot of people that don't watch Pistons basketball year round. So I figured it'd be a higher number, but minus 120 is not the greatest value, I think, for us.
Fair enough. Unless you have much else on this one. It seems like we got some prop bets out of the way. Obviously, Pistons first game. The one last thing I will say, first game in Indiana.
In Indiana. Yes,
Indiana,
sir.
on Wednesday. I don't know what the opening spread is. I'm assuming the Pistons are underdogs.
For sure.
Actually, let me look. Current spread is Indiana minus 5.5. Total is 233.5.
That's kind of less than I thought it would be.
Any bets for that game?
I said it in our main episode. Go watch that, of course. Pure Michigan Sports, everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube, etc. Jaden Ivey 2+ 2+3s made. I love that line. I really think he can, simply for the fact that I do expect them to stagger minutes with him and Cade, and I expect the ball to be in his hands a lot. And I think what we've seen from him so far in the preseason and some other off-season type of workouts and improvements are he knows, and he I think went into this offseason knowing exactly what he needed to get better at, which is no more careless turnovers. You're not the rookie anymore. And shoot the ball more consistently. I think he's done exactly that. I think he can continue to do that. I wouldn't mess with the spread because I just don't know about this team yet. And I want to leave us on one last message here, which is I've been pretty positive on the Pistons. I think they can be a team that pushes 29, 30 wins. I really do. However, it won't happen early. Your first 6 games are essentially against every contender in the East. You've got the Pacers, who will be pretty solid by all accounts. Then you've got Cleveland, Boston, Miami, Philly, and then you're home for the Knicks. That is an absolute gauntlet to start the season for a pretty terrible team. So I think that you could stare down like a 2-4 or even like an 0-6 start and still be pretty solid as a basketball team. Obviously, that will mess with your mental a little bit for the younger kids, but I think if we sit here in a week or 2 weeks, whenever that stretch is done, and we say they're 1-5, should we press the panic button? It's all right. You're playing the best teams in the East. Expect a little bit of a rough start to this season, but it's been a fun one. I appreciate the time here to do a little bit of a preview for the Pistons. You want to do the outro? You did the intro.
I'll
give you the
give
honors
it
here.
my best shot. Yeah, I mean, it's similar to the Wings there too, and I think you kind of hit on that. It's not going to be perfect. There's going to be teams that if they want to have semi-successful seasons, oh boy, they're going to have to grind. And I think you put it perfectly. To quote you, you hit the nail on the head there. And this has been Christian Peck-Dimit and Alex Deimel in our Pistons preview edition of Pure Michigan Sports. Again, check us out everywhere that you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube Shorts, YouTube Reels, on our Instagram, our Twitter, anywhere that you happen to hear our voices. Go check us out. Again, this has been Pure Michigan Sports, signing off.